we quite often kind of jam during sound checks, and usually our crew kind of record what we do and send the recordings to us so that we can, try to get some new stuff written when we're on the road, because it's not very easy being creative on the road, we find. But in this case, we did this kind of jam and pretty much wrote the essentials of this song during one sound check, and then we actually forgot we'd done it. Somebody recorded it, sent us the recording, like 2 years later. We said, oh, can you send us all those soundcheck recordings? And we were listening through them and we were like, what? I don't remember this one. This is really cool. So yeah, it was almost like another band had written it for us and given it to us, but we knew it was us. So that was a very nice moment. And so that was the first song we recorded for the album. It's been the first one we released. I think just that spontaneity and the kind of like the good vibes of that song, the kind of upbeat message of it, felt like a good one to start with.
So the choices that and I'm glad I'm talking to you, because the choices that are made during your albums, I feel like you being the person on keys and soundscapes, you always create such an interesting listen that kind of sets your music apart from any other band. And to me, listening to it when I'm playing it on the radio for people sounds different than when I'm listening in my car to my home stereo. But my favorite is when I have my headphones on and I'm just tuned into that. So can you talk a little bit about, did you use any new instrumentation or effects on this new album?
No, that's nice to hear. I think we've always felt like we were a band who sounded best on headphones, so I'm glad that you think that too. I mean, this time around, our producer Charlie is the kind of not owner, but he's the sort of guardian of this very cool amp that a Vox, like a 60s Vox amp that used to be owned by David Gilmour. And it's we put basically everything on the album through this amp, like guitars, keyboards, vocals. We reamped it all through this beautiful old amp, and it gave the whole album a really nice kind of like dusty, vintage, kind of like slightly, not crackly, that would be overstating it, but just a warmth, I would say. And I think that hopefully that really comes across to people who are listening out for that kind of thing. Other than that, we used we recorded strings for quite a lot of the tracks in like a local church near the studio where we were recording. The strings were scored by like a guy who I went to school with from the age of 9, so that was really nice, like my best friend basically. And we also recorded like a local school's children's choir, which are used on a few, they're on You and Me, and they're on a few other tracks. So yeah, there's little things like that I think give the album a very nice sound.
I love that you brought together your friends and family and community for the album, which probably made it extra special for you.
It did, I think like 4 albums in, you start to actually think it's just nice to kind of do that kind of thing. It's fun. It makes it more special for the people who have been so supportive to us over our whole career, our friends and family. And, it just means that when we listen to the album ourselves, we're like, that's Will. No one needs to know that that's Will or who Will is, but it means something to me.
Yeah, that's special. So here's kind of just a general question. Gus, what did your childhood smell like? Where did you grow up, and what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of that question?
First thing that comes to mind is probably a kind of like a smell of sort of rotting leaves, kind of nature in decay. I grew up in the countryside, and my mum is a very, very outdoorsy person who kind of like forced us to go out on walks all the time, in forests and just anywhere really. And so that smell of kind of like wet leaves on the floor of a forest is very much a smell that reminds me of my childhood.
So let's get into the album The Dream, which is coming out in its entirety on February 11th. It seems like a lot of the songs, at least the stories and the vocals, are mixes between what could be very personal experiences, and then it always seems like it has an element of magic from literature or movies. So what do we have to expect from the new album, The Dream? Is that indeed how you guys write stuff, or what is your writing process? Does it include all those things?
Yeah, I think, we've always historically been quite influenced by kind of like different elements of culture, films, books, art, and things like that. I think this time around it's actually a bit more of a personal album. It's a bit more like we featured lots of people we know on the album, like our partners, my wife, our parents, our friends, kind of singing or doing little like kind of vocal samples and stuff. It's slightly it's a little bit of a sort of like unintentional concept album to do with sort of like the American dream, perhaps kind of like how it, you know, kind of goes well and goes badly. Lots of songs are about America and set in America. And also this idea of like the pandemic, you know, where we were all stuck at home, you know, in this slightly like weird Groundhog Day kind of experience, where actually making this album was for us an opportunity to kind of travel through our music and like, you know, go to like far off places and travel through time and stuff, and, you know, do stuff that we couldn't do being just stuck at home the whole time.
What would your film series be that you would love to compose the next set of music for? Is there a favorite that you have? Are you like a sound person or a sci-fi or Lord of the Rings?
I am a Lord of the Rings person. I'm also, did you say James Bond as well? Yeah, I'm a big James Bond fan. I actually watched during 2020, me and my two kind of oldest friends, one of whom scored the strings for our album, we watched every single James Bond film like independently at the same time in our houses, and like we scored them, like gave them marks out of 10 in different categories afterwards, and cooked a themed meal for each film. It was very, very fun. And I make no apology for it, despite it being quite dorky. And yeah, so actually on this album, there's a song called Philadelphia, which the brief that we gave to Will for the strings was like kind of like Beatles meets 60s John Barry James Bond score. So, you know, we actually, whilst we were not like, you know, scoring a James Bond film, I feel that we were perhaps taking a lot of influence from that. And I would love to be asked to do a James Bond song as a band. That would be incredible. So, you know, Eon Films, if you're listening, get in touch.
You never know what kind of power we have here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin to get that happening. So
I hear Barbara Broccoli is a listener. So, you know, what can I say?
There you go.